So now it's time for me to get really geeky and give you the kid who grew up in the 80s and loved the Transformers and wears the shirt Transformers movie review.
I will forewarn you that I was not a Transformers geek like Matt is.
But you
I
knew a
appreciate
bit.
it. I have watched the show before. I get some of the little characters and the story development, but by no means am I taking the perspective of Matt here.
So here we go. So, in a Transformers movie, there are a few human characters. There should naturally have been Spike and Sparkplug. Spike got turned into Sam, and his dad got ignored. So instead of having his dad, you wind up with his kind of girlfriend, Michaela,
Yeah.
who was like the carjacking girl who knew a bit about cars and could pop open the hood and say, this is a hooziggy wiggy what what, and then you wind up thinking, oh, maybe she knows about cars. Comes in handy later. But the original Transformers was not about that. It was about a father and son who meet the Autobots, and they create this cool platonic family. And instead, we got a kid, and his gardening father, and his girlfriend, who was kind of his girlfriend, but not really, his semi-drunk mom, a soldier, his wife, and his daughter, and 5 soldier buddies in Qatar, a cryptologist from down under, her fat buddy, his cousin and grandma, a car salesman and his mom, a secret government organization, the Department of Defense, oh, and George Bush's socks, and ding-dongs. The challenge here, Michael Bay, was to create a movie with CG characters that we cared about, like Gollum.
I agree that the film was crowded.
Yeah.
I personally really liked the cryptologist character and would have liked to have found out
Yeah.
more about her and followed that character. But I'm just going to have to say that I think people were really necessary in this movie. This movie was not the Transformers that you remember from your, childhood days.
And that would be my problem with it. Because this
Understandable,
Transformers,
but I'm just saying that this movie is, I truly believe it was supposed to be a real-life Transformers, rooted in reality.
You know,
you
the
needed
first-
people for people to be able
the
to...
first 3 episodes of Transformers gives you the idea that this show is one of those rare gems that has a brilliant backstory, has humans in it that make it relatable, have Bumblebee, who speaks, to be the liaison between the two, and you have this beautiful, beautiful origin story. And they wound up managing to basically not only ruin that, but also change every character, make them all entirely the wrong color or put flames on them, or make them one way or another irrecognizable, take their shapes that were basic and easy to understand and easy to translate to film, make them overly complicated and impossible to really recognize. And all of a sudden you wind up with, what, the Allspark thing that kind of got wound, put it in my chest, Sam. I really felt for a moment that that might have turned into the Matrix of Leadership or something, like they were going for something, grasping at something from the original, and it just wound up being made up, no real important thing, and it was shadows and whispers of being the Transformers I remembered.
I get your qualm. I know that next week I'm going to have the same problem when we're talking about Harry Potter, because
Yeah.
I have read the books and you haven't.
Yeah.
It's going to kill me the movie's not like the book, but it's not the TV show, Matt. This movie was not the TV show.
But if this
No,
movie- if
this
this
is like, okay,
movie-
here, I'm going to bring up the Galactus argument we used with Fantastic Four. Galactus, I believe, was a cloud, a cosmic cloud,
but whatever.
because it's
If
rooted
you
in
don't wanna
reality.
make-
People wouldn't
if you
understand. They
don't
wouldn't
wanna
believe
make-
it'd be funny to see a giant robot in purple and pink. Same thing. This movie, I believe, was rooted in reality. It was a real life Transformers, not a CG Pixar
If you
version
don't
of
wanna make
Transformers.
a
It's not a
Galactus
fantasy.
movie-
It's not this child movie. It was something that was supposed to be hardcore action, relatable to people.
And if they called it Giant Robots, or if they called it GoBots or something, they wouldn't have had to worry about source material. They could have just made it up. But they called it Transformers. They wanted a name, they
Again,
wanted
I thought it was
characters.
derivative.
And they ruined the characters. Completely. They ripped Jazz in half without making him in any way important. Like, how are you supposed to care about these things? The main issue I have with it is the fact that they decided to make a giant robot movie and try to make it seem a little bit like Transformers. Well, they wrecked everything that made the show
So you're saying you didn't
great.
enjoy it?
I loved it. It was an
So
awesome
what
movie.
are you complaining about?
I'm complaining about the fact it was an awesome movie that was a terrible
It was
translation.
derivative.
It was barely derivative. They took names and they had Peter Cullen's voice. That was about where the derivation ended.
No, some
and
of the
Michael Bay
characteristics
making
were
things
there.
up. Michael Bay wound up making a movie because he knows so many people in the military from doing The Rock and Armageddon, and he wound up making a military movie with some Transformers thrown into it instead of Transformers with the military in it.
Again,
It
rooted
was,
in reality. It was the perspective of human beings.
And this movie
That's who we relate
wasn't
to.
called The Friends of the Transformers. It was called Transformers.
Anyway, enough of that argument. I'm gonna say that I agree that the villains in Transformers were a little underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Again, I've already mentioned before that I didn't watch Transformers when I was younger, but I am kind of familiar with the show. I'm a little disappointed that there was no Megatron Starscream dynamic there, because that was one part that I really thought was funny in the TV show.
One conversation that didn't even hint at it. You
Well-
disappoint me yet again. That was garbage.
Well, okay, if you watched the
Garbage.
show, you would have understood what it was hinting at, but if you didn't watch the show, you would have had no idea. You just thought, oh,
And if
okay.
you watch the show, you get disappointed that that's all you get.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Also, in my few episodes of watching Transformers, I loved Soundwave, and I was really bummed that there was no Soundwave in this. I mean, there was Frenzy, which was the tape recorder in the show.
Well, it was the
no,
tape in
itself.
Soundwave
Sorry, in the show.
Yep.
And instead, Frenzy in the movie ends up being the boombox itself.
And if you think about the
didn't even have the
science-
cool voice. The voice.
Yeah, if you think about the science, that kind of makes a lot of sense because this law of conservation of mass has never seemed to matter in Transformers. A little robot that's this big when he's a tape deck can turn into like a two-story tall robot.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
But it was nice to see that Frenzy
Oh,
and a
and
boombox.
on this note, dude, why did Megatron not turn into a gun?
That was
Ha
that was terrible. I'm sorry.
Okay, but again, this is going to go into my whole Galactus argument. How dumb would it have been if Megatron turned into a gun?
You know what?
A floating
Poor,
gun?
Lazy writing is what that is. I've seen a lot of episodes of Transformers where that looked really cool. And I'm sorry, if you think you can't do that, you're just a lazy writer or a lazy filmmaker.
Again, I'm gonna go ahead and say that if the movie was made exactly the way you were expecting it to be made, a lot of people that are like you would have liked it and would have been happy with it. But I think in terms of appeasing the general public, it wouldn't have really worked.
You know what?
Unless it was a movie that was marketed like Cars, where it's a movie about artificial insentient objects being anthropomorphic. In that sense, fine.
No. What you
It
have to
worked.
do is have better writers and less lazy filmmaking. And you wind up with someone who if you don't want to make a Galactus movie, don't make a Galactus movie. There are very simple things you can do. And Optimus Prime and Megatron, are they brothers?
Oh yeah, I
'Cause
did question that in the movie as well.
I don't know. Was that a weird throwaway line? Is he just really familial?
Or
with
did he mean
other
brother as in
Transformers? Yeah.
universal brother?
I don't know.
knows?
But you know what?
Anyway.
Overall, I loved watching this movie. Michael Bay makes a friggin' great action film. Giant robots everywhere. It was amazing. The only problem
You wouldn't
I
have
have
expected hearing that from Matt, considering his bitching the second half of this
For the last
episode.
15 minutes.
Anyway, the movie was really good. Next week, we're going to be talking about Harry Potter!
and I get to talk about how much I love the movie, and you get to talk about how much it's not the book. No, that
Yes,
muggles,
I will be the
muggles.
hypocrite compared to this week, but can't wait.
Yeah. So we're going to be giving you a preview and a review if all things go through. So
Cool.
this is going to be Harry Potter week for the next couple. So here it comes, guys. Thanks for watching, and
See you guys next week.
see you next week.